to see you. Please be seated. Okay, we're here for an evidentiary hearing. Ms. Brown, I'll let you lead us off.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Kim Brown from Landis Rath & Cobb, appearing today on behalf of the FTX Recovery Trust. Your Honor, before turning today's hearing, we just wanted to offer our deepest condolences to the court on the passing of the Honorable John Dorsey. It is a tremendous loss for the entire community, and our hearts are with the court and Judge Dorsey's family during this very difficult time.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much on behalf of all the court. Thank you,
Your Honor. With respect to today's hearing, as set forth in the original agenda, there were two matters that were scheduled to go forward. We are pleased to advise that, as set forth in the third amended agenda, which is the current operative one, the trust was able to engage with discussions with Mr. Livijenko's counsel to resolve their concerns, and that has resulted in the voluntary withdrawal of the motion to compel. So that's coming off the calendar.
Great.
And that leads us to the only matter that is proceeding before Your Honor today, which is item number 7 on the agenda, which is the FTX Recovery Trust objections to the claims filed by ELD Capital. Your Honor, unless you have any questions for me, I'll cede the podium over to our co-counsel, Mr. Gluckstein, who will be handling the substance.
Great. I do not. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Brian Gluckstein, Sullivan & Cromwell for the FTX Recovery Trust. We are here today to address the trust's objections to the pending proofs of claim filed by ELD Capital. If it pleases the court, I propose we address the evidentiary matters first and then turn to argument. In support of the objection, Your Honor, the trust has submitted the declarations of Kumanan Ramanathan and the supplemental declaration of Kumanan Ramanathan filed at docket numbers 34252 and 35328 respectively. And we would respectively request that both of those declarations be admitted into evidence at this time as Mr. Ramanathan's direct testimony.
Okay. Does anyone object to the omission of the two declarations in the evidence?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone seek to cross-examine the witness on the substance of his testimony today?
Yes, Mr. Ramanathan is in the courtroom today and present and available for cross-examination.
Okay. Are we expecting live testimony today?
Unless there's any direct examination by way of live testimony, no.
Okay.
Okay. In addition, Your Honor, that is the testimony then that the trust is offering in support of the objection. In addition, Your Honor, we did submit exhibits, and we, in addition to Mr. Ramanathan's declarations, would request exhibits 2, FTX 2, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12 be part of the record in support of the objection.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
All right. They're admitted.
That concludes our portion of the evidentiary presentation. I'll turn it over to counsel for ELD with respect to their evidence.
Okay. Before we begin, Mr. Barron.
Barron.
Okay. Mr. Barron, there's a declaration that you submitted as to facts.
Correct.
Are you intending to move that into evidence because under the ABA model rules, you may be disqualified from moving forward as counsel?
My personal declaration?
Correct.
No.
Okay. All right. Then let's move forward.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think I'd begin in the same fashion as my friend on the other side, just by addressing our documentary evidence.
Okay.
We do intend to call Mr. Cubitt as a live witness today.
All right.
But before doing so, we've identified a number of proposed exhibits as well. The first one being Mr. Cubitt's declaration. We would propose submitting that just to avoid duplicative testimony today.
Okay. Does anyone object to the omission of Mr. Cubitt's declaration into evidence? It seems it will be subject to further direct and then your opportunity to cross-examine.
Yeah, no objection, Your Honor.
Great. It's admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. We also would seek to admit into evidence the amended proof of claim of ELD Capital, that's ELD 3, as well as the FTX Recovery Trust's responses and objections to ELD Capital's request for production of documents, ELD 7, as well as 3 documents produced by the trust, ELD 8, ELD 9, and ELD 10.
Okay, any objection?
No objection, Your Honor, other than just a point of clarification with respect to ELD3, which is the claimant's proof of claim. We obviously have no objection to it being in the record, but there's many disputed facts in that proof of claim and would object to the extent they're offering for the truth of the matter asserted.
Okay. I would agree, but why don't you confirm that on the record?
We understand that the proof of claim includes our allegations subject to today's hearing.
Okay. All right, so those documents are omitted.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
I'd like to then call Mr. Dominic John Cubitt to the stand.
Okay, one moment before you do. Mr. Gluckstein, can you say the numbers of the documents again that you moved into evidence?
Yes, Your Honor. Exhibits 2, FTX 2, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. Cubitt, are you with us today, sir? And if so, please turn on your video and your audio. Okay, great. Before we begin to swear in Mr. Cubitt, we need to move the parties that are appearing by Zoom only by phone into the waiting room. And when that is completed, then we will proceed to swear in Mr. Cubitt.
Thank you, Your Honor. Maybe it would be helpful if I just note for the record, Mr. Cubitt is joined on screen by Leona Salmon, his wife, and a co-principal of ELD per your chamber's instructions.
Okay, great. Good, okay. Mr. Cubitt, can you hear me, sir?
Your Honor.
Okay, you can hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we are going to swear you in as a witness. All right, so give us one moment.
Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to the best of your knowledge and ability?
I do.
Please state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Dominic John Cubitt, C-U-B-I-T-T.
Thank you.
Counsel, before you begin, I have questions for Mr. Cubitt.
Sure, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Cubitt, you can lower your hand, sir. Thank you. Mr. Cubitt, you're appearing by Zoom to testify. You're not in the courtroom. I would like you to identify. I know your counsel just did, but you've been sworn in, so please identify who is in the room with you today.
My wife, Leona Salmon, is sitting beside me. She's in the room.
Okay. Is anyone else in the room with you today?
Nobody else is in the room today.
Okay. You understand, sir, that if anyone enters the room, you'll stop your testimony and advise me. Do you agree to that?
I do.
Okay. If anyone attempts to communicate to you during your testimony, do you agree that you'll stop the testimony and you'll let me know?
Yes, I will.
Okay. Do you have any other methods of communication open on the computer in front of you right now? Like, for instance, email or a chat program?
There's no running email and no running chat, but I do have a folder ready with all the exhibits.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Like I said, if anyone attempts to communicate to you during the substance of the during your testimony regarding the scope of your testimony, you need to stop and you need to notify me. Okay?
Okay, I shall do that.
All right. Thank you very much. With those caveats and understandings, let's move forward with the testimony. If at any point, Mr. Cubitt, you cannot hear your counsel or anything that's being said in the courtroom, please stop and let us know, and we'll adjust the audio because we need to make sure that you can hear very clearly and that we can hear you.
I will. So far, it's loud and clear.
Excellent. All right. Let's move forward then.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Mr. Cubitt, can you just begin by briefly describing your personal background, please?
I'm a husband and father. I'm essentially a software engineer, having graduated from Essex University with honours in software with artificial intelligence. I spent many years in the software industry, and that's about me.
Sure. Where do you reside?
Currently, I live in Spain.
Where did you live prior to Spain?
In the UK, in England.
Why did you relocate to Spain?
I was starting a new project at the time, and at that time, Spain offered a much lower cost of living.
In practical terms, can you describe what ELD Capital is?
Here in Europe, at the time, we were trading crypto with our life savings and doing okay, but the regulatory landscape became extremely uncertain, and as a result of that, we formed ELD Capital as a little family company. Indeed, the name ELD stands for Ethan, our 7-year-old son, Leona, and Dominic. It was started just with our capital. It's just us, really, so that we had some regulatory certainty that we could proceed without falling foul of the regulator here in Europe.
What is ELD Capital's source of funds?
The life savings of myself and my wife.
Can you describe any outside investment ELD Capital has ever taken?
There is none. It was just for us.
Where does ELD Capital operate?
It operates out of our family home, wherever we're living.
And who's responsible for executing trades on behalf of ELD Capital?
I am.
Was Ms. Salmon involved in the operations of ELD Capital?
She was. The division of labour is broadly split between execution of trades, myself, and the administrative capacity, my wife. My wife, Leona, would be responsible for things like the KYC AML, for the exchange, these types of things.
What research methods did you use when trading on behalf of ELD Capital?
For ELD, broadly speaking, it was a macroeconomic thesis looking at the cyclicality of the crypto market and the business cycle, the broader business cycle. It wasn't a high-speed trading thing. It was an investment, long-term investment vehicle. So we weren't trading per se. We were more investing.
What proprietary research methods, if any, did ELD use?
No proprietary methods, particularly, other than, I would follow macroeconomic commentators that I felt were interesting and accurate to an extent within the industry.
What trading tools did you use when trading on behalf of ELD Capital?
The FTX platform was all that we used. We never connected to the API. We never used any automated trading. It was just occasional manual execution required for long-term investment.
Are you familiar with any trading tools from other applications throughout your life or professional experience?
Yes, many.
Can you just briefly summarize, please?
Well, in a former lifetime, before ELD and before I was married, I built a buy-side platform that consisted of a tick database and complex event processor in order to host a number of different algorithmic trades. That was, at the time, that was on foreign exchange, and tried various different approaches. Some were momentum-based, mean reversion, So I've got some history with automated trading, but that was not the nature of the game for ELD.
What asset classes did ELD trade using the FTX platform?
Just high cap crypto, so top 5 by capitalization cryptocurrency, so mainly Bitcoin, Ethereum. I wanted to take a position in Solana toward the end of just before FTX collapsed.
How did you determine which asset classes ELD would trade?
We really looked at the market capitalization, and we only went for high caps with high liquidity. Yeah.
Why did you take that approach?
Well, it was our life savings, and that's a considerable trade when you place a trade, maybe 100,000. If it's something very small, you can move the market. There isn't sufficient liquidity to support easy entry and exit, and these coins are sort of quite referred to in a vulgar way. Really, we sought to keep to the main high capitalization coins that were stable and that they would be there next year.
Did you rely on the assets in your FTX account for short-term capital needs?
Yes, I mean, at the time of its collapse, we had a large cash position. Essentially, it was for us more or less not quite a current account, but it was a bank account. We kept a lot of money there, and we used it for our capital needs.
What was your assessment of the risks of keeping all your assets in your FTX account?
Well, I felt that FTX was a really strong exchange. It was very well publicized, advertised on the stadium. It seemed like on the front of Time magazine, all of this type of thing seemed like a very solid exchange.
We'll get to the Tron announcement that's the subject of your claim in a moment. But for now, do you recall that announcement was made on November 10th, 2022?
Yes.
What did you know about FTX's financial condition at or before the time of the Tron announcement on November 10th, 2022?
I was aware that it was suffering a liquidity crisis.
What did you understand a liquidity crisis to be in that context?
There'd been a run on the bank, in inverted commas, and obviously it's not a bank, but there'd been a run, and there was a shortfall of immediate capital that they needed servicing.
How did you come to the understanding that FTX was experiencing a liquidity crisis?
It was widely reported in the media. For example, Reuters, Bloomberg, this is the sort of news outlet that I would monitor.
Did you engage in any trades when you determined that FTX might be experiencing a liquidity crisis?
Yes.
Can you describe those trades, please?
Initially, having attempted a number of withdrawals, all unsuccessfully, I purchased a very small amount of AVAX, which was a very unusual coin, not something that we would ordinarily consider purchasing, but it was a very small amount. The idea there was to probe to see whether the withdrawal had been closed for all coins or whether it was just certain coins that it was closed for. It was unclear at the time to me. Later, after that, we attempted to take advantage of the advertised Tron facility and perform the necessary trades to liquidate our current positions and purchase TRX and various other Tron-related tokens.
So before we move on to the Tron announcement, just speaking about the earlier trades, the AVAX one, for example, what was the result of the withdrawal attempt that you made?
every single withdrawal attempt silently failed.
When you say silently failed, what was your user experience around that?
Normally, when you place a withdrawal, you get a notification that it's pending, it's being processed. The sense that something is happening, even though it may take a few minutes. In this case, nothing at all. No feedback was provided whatsoever. No, as well, often you would get a link to something on the blockchain, a transaction on the blockchain that that you could see that your transaction was occurring if it had got that far. Again, nothing at all, just nothing.
What conclusion did you draw from that?
But having tried odd little coins, bit of Sol, bit of AVAX, I concluded that withdrawals were blocked or paused, or yeah.
What was your view about the possible duration of the liquidity crisis you referenced?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Of course. What was your view of the possible duration of the liquidity crisis you referenced?
Yes, I understand. For me, I thought that there were various different participants that would participate in a bailout of some sort. There would be some arrangement to be made, and I really thought that it was going to go on for a bit. I mean, months, I suspected. But I did expect a deal to be struck. There was noise of sovereign wealth funds being interested, other exchanges.
What was your understanding about whether there was a possibility that FTX would declare bankruptcy?
Well, there was speculation in the media at the time, that possibly it could go bankrupt. But again, there was a lot of speculation. But equally, there was a lot of stuff in the media that perhaps it would be bailed out by one other exchange or another. Various different opportunities were arising, or sovereign wealth funds, as I said. So there was a real mix of stuff in the media.
Now, moving on to the Tron announcement, can you describe how you became aware of the Tron announcement?
It was on the front page of the FTX website.
And do you recall what date you viewed the Tron announcement?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Of course. Do you recall the date on which you viewed the Tron announcement?
Not the exact date, I could know, but around about, November 8, 9, something like this, 10.
Okay. And how did you access the announcement itself?
Well, what the announcement was present on the front page of the website. It was also on the support area of the website, FTX website. It was on their official Twitter. It was well reported in Reuters, Bloomberg, as a sort of lifeline for customers that had funds stuck on FTX.
What was your reaction to the announcement?
Well, I mean, for us, we were in a very financially vulnerable position, and we looked at the announcement with interest, and ultimately, we took an extremely painful decision to try to avail of the facility.
Was there a certain part of the announcement that most caught your attention?
Yes, the part of the announcement that told us essentially that we could obtain immediate liquidity, albeit at an extremely high cost.
Do you recall seeing the announcement anywhere other than on the FTX website?
Yes, it was echoed by Justin Sun, his social media, and the Huobi exchange also echoed the announcement. This was to be expected as it was a deal with Tron, and Justin Sun was the guy who owned, I guess, Tron.
Do you recall reviewing any media reports concerning the announcement?
Sure. I mean, Reuters reported it as a lifeline. Bloomberg, Justin Sun was on Bloomberg. Yeah.
At the time of the announcement, what did you know about Tron?
At the time of the announcement, not a whole lot. And as such, I sought to find out a little bit about the blockchain itself and read the white paper.
What was the significance of reading the white paper?
The white paper is a technical document that details the specifics of how the blockchain functions. So, for example, whether it be proof of work, proof of stake, the underlying functionality. And for me, to understand that will be whether or not it was safe to put our funds into the Tron token or onto the Tron blockchain.
What did you understand about the limits, if any, of the Tron special facility?
Well, the announcement did indicate an initial liquidity injection of 13 million, but also the point that was made within the announcement was that there would be weekly deposits or weekly injections of liquidity. So it was an ongoing thing.
What did you ultimately do in response to the Tron announcement?
We liquidated our entire portfolio and bought Tron and various other Tron related tokens, mainly TRX, because it had the highest liquidity, and cascading down from that some other lower liquidity coins that offered a slightly better value for money, shall I say. These coins were trading at a tremendous premium on FTX relative to market price.
What, if anything, did you understand about why the Tron tokens were trading at a premium to the market price?
Well, the depositing of Tron tokens was closed, and as such, there was really only one market maker, and that would have been FTX or Alameda. And when you've only got one seller, they can kind of name their price.
Did you understand when you were purchasing the Tron tokens that you'd be purchasing at a premium?
Yes.
And why did you ultimately go forward with the purchases?
We didn't really have a choice, to be brutally honest. We were in a very vulnerable financial position, as I said, and our need for liquidity was paramount, even if that meant decimating our life savings. We had no choice.
I apologize for interrupting. Did you attempt to withdraw the Tron tokens you purchased?
I did.
What happened when you tried to do so?
Again, literally nothing. I left the withdrawal going overnight at one stage in excess of 12 hours, but nothing happened. Didn't go anywhere.
How, if at all, did that differ from other withdrawal attempts you were accustomed to making on the FTX platform?
At the time, it was identical to all other withdrawal attempts. Every single one silently failed, in that it offered no feedback. Nothing happened. But obviously, prior to the liquidity crisis, withdrawal operated very differently.
How did it operate prior to the liquidity crisis?
When you place a withdrawal within a few moments, you get an email for a start. You get a status, and you get some kind of activity on the user interface that would indicate that something's happening, like a status saying pending or processing. After a little while, you get a link showing you where on the blockchain your transaction is occurring, and it takes some time, depending upon the chain, for that to be confirmed. So a number of other blocks must be minted after that in order to in order for that to be considered solid, if you like, and then you would receive confirmation.
So coming back to your withdrawal attempts of the Tron coins, after you made the withdrawal attempts and nothing happened, what did you do?
I cancelled all of the withdrawal attempts, as the wording of the announcement was really focused on something called a swap, a one-to-one swap, and it referred to a special facility. And whilst I had anything in the status of attempting to withdraw it, those funds were not available. It was that they were tied up. So in order to free up all of the asset classes, all of the tokens, I cancelled every single withdrawal.
How long did you wait before you canceled the withdrawal attempts?
A varying amount, but as I said, I left the TRX one going for over 12 hours. I don't recall specifically how long it was before I cancelled the others.
Why did you cancel the transactions?
I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Yes, why did you cancel the transactions?
Because when a transaction is in this state of sort of nothingness, it ties up the capital or the asset. So, for example, if you had, let's say, all of your money in a withdrawal, it would debit your account of the dollars, let's say, but they weren't going anywhere. So I didn't want the account to be tied up in a sense. I wanted it to be free, such that the swap activity could occur.
What, if anything, did the failure of those attempted withdrawals tell you about the Tron facility at the time?
At the time, to me, it was confirmation that a withdrawal was not the appropriate mechanism, as kind of alluded to and indicated in the announcement. It was a special facility and a swap.
Did you review any instructions regarding the appropriate way to utilize the Tron special facility?
Sure. To us, it looked as though we had to open up an account with the other side of the equation, which was the Hubi exchange that Justin Sun was involved with. There was also a Google form that you had to fill out honestly to say, what tokens you had, what TRX. And this form indicated, again, it was a further statement that Tron was committed to conducting this swap into perpetuity, and that this was the mechanism. We had to go through the KYC AML process for opening up the account with the Hubi exchange, which we did, and we carried on like that.
How did you attempt to participate in the special facility through Hubi?
By opening up an account and by filling out the form indicating that we wanted to avail of the swap. And as we were opening up the account, when we in the email correspondence we stated that the reason for us opening the account was to avail of the swap facility.
What efforts did you make to reach out to FTX support during this time?
Well, the FTX website went dark and it didn't exist anymore. So we had no basis to communicate with FTX all of a sudden. But we have extensive communication with Hubi.
What was the value of your account before you purchased Tron tokens on November 10th?
A little under $600,000.
What was the value of your account after you purchased Tron tokens on November 10th?
More or less $100,000.
Why did you decide to accept such a significant reduction in the value of the assets in your account?
We had no real choice. We needed the liquidity. Whilst we have current accounts, our main source of capital was FTX, and we needed the money for newborn child. We had no choice. We needed the liquidity, and we recognised that the cost was tremendous to us at the time, but we absolutely needed that.
What was the value you sought to realize when purchasing Tron tokens pursuant to the announcement?
Well, we wanted to receive the tokens so that we could sell them and gain immediate liquidity. We paid a very high price for immediate liquidity.
Do you have any understanding of what FTX stood to gain from offering the facility?
Sure. I mean, if you look at the discrepancy between the market value of the Tron tokens and the value of which they were sold on the FTX exchange, everybody that participated, ourselves included, decimated the value of their account and reduced the debt burden for FTX.
So before concluding, I just want to direct your attention and introduce an exhibit. I believe you have a folder of exhibits available to you on your desktop. Is that right?
I do.
And that includes both exhibits that ELD Capital has designated as well as that FTX has designated or the trust has designated, correct?
Exactly, yeah. I've got all of the exhibits.
Have you reviewed the documents that FTX has produced, or the trust, I should say, has produced in this contested matter?
Yes.
And has the trust produced computer code among the documents it produced?
Yes, it produced a lengthy Python file.
Have you reviewed that computer code?
I have.
Can you describe what, if any, experience you have reading or writing Python?
I've been using Python for about 10 years. Python before 10 years ago was around, but it wasn't. Its rise in popularity was coincident to the rise of data science and, in particular, artificial intelligence.
Have you used Python in connection with your work in the computer science area?
Yes, absolutely. I've written a portfolio management tool, or fully automated portfolio management tool using Python.
When reading a piece of code in Python, would you generally have an operational understanding of it?
Yes.
If you could open up the exhibit that's been marked ELD 10, and let me know when you have that open, I would appreciate it.
I had it open.
Can you please turn to the bait stamp page, FTX ELD Capital 62?
Excuse me. Yep, I'm on page 62.
Just want to direct your attention further to the line of code in essentially the fifth paragraph that begins if coin. I don't want to read further because this has been marked highly confidential and discussed that we'll just describe it generally.
I'm there, yep.
Can you explain what that piece of code does?
I mean, the broader piece of code is surrounding the FTX withdrawal process. This particular line of code looks to see what asset you're trying to withdraw, whether it be TRX, BTT, JST, Sun, or HT. And if it is one of those that you're trying to withdraw, it suggests that it tells it to use the hot wallet TRX2.
And how do you understand this to relate to the Tron special facility announcement?
Well, now I understand that there would have been 13 million worth of Tron put into the TRX2 hot wallet, and this was the means by which people extracted their funds.
Okay. Can I direct your attention now to the bait stamp page FTX ELD Capital 107?
Okay, I'm on 107.
Okay. Just direct your attention to the bottommost paragraph that begins DEF process withdrawal. Do you see that?
Yes.
And you can take the time that you need to review this. But my question will just be, can you explain what this piece of code does?
There's two pathways. One pathway is kind of a jump through. If you're using the TRX2 hot wallet previously mentioned, you fall through this piece of code and carry on to validate the withdrawal, the crypto, or validate can process crypto withdrawal, as it says. There's another pathway, if you're not trying to withdraw TRX tokens, that checks your jurisdiction. If you're in the Bahamas, you can continue, otherwise it will silently fail.
Do you understand there to be any relationship between FTX and the Bahamas?
FTX was based in the Bahamas.
Let's direct your attention now to the page FTX ELD Capital 104.
Okay, yep, I'm on 104.
About 2/3 of the way down the page, there's a line of code that begins, if bool redis. Do you see that?
Yes.
And does that piece of code span a few lines?
It does, yep.
Can you explain what this piece of code does?
This piece of code checks to see if there's a global pause on withdrawal processing, and exempt from that as if you're in the Bahamas jurisdiction, but with an additional check that you're also connecting from a Bahamas IP. Further, there's a fall through that if you're using the TRX2 hot wallet, you'd continue as well.
What would happen, to your understanding, if a user tried to withdraw TRX from outside the Bahamas pursuant to this code?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? I lost the beginning.
Of course. To your understanding, what would happen if a user tried to withdraw TRX or the Tron tokens from outside the Bahamas?
It would fall through and continue. So in this case, there's a special carve out for, it finally says, and not TRX2, so it would continue. If you were withdrawing any token, but you happen to be in the Bahamas and you happen to have a Bahamas IP, you could withdraw anything you liked. The only jurisdictional exemption is for TRX2.
And could you look up to about 1/3 of the way down that same page to the piece of code beginning, if not super admin?
Yeah.
Does that piece of code run a number of lines?
Yes, it does.
Can you explain what this piece of code does?
two very critical pieces of code in here that it does a global financial health check on the exchange. So there's a negative insurance fund check, and there's also another check.
Can you explain what a global health check is?
Well, we know that the state of the exchange was that it was in a liquidity crisis. There's an additional check in here to make sure that there aren't too many negative balances. And given that the FTT token had collapsed, and the FTT token was largely used for collateralizing other trades, many balances would have been negative. And obviously the insurance fund, these are broad financial health checks, all of which obviously at the time it would fail.
To your understanding, what would have happened when a user attempted to withdraw TRX or Tron tokens pursuant to this piece of code?
It would never attempt to. It would never get to the point of attempting to, because the global financial health check would fail.
Can you turn to page FTX ELD Capital 112, please?
Yep, I'm there.
Do you see about 1/3 of the way down the page, there's a piece of code beginning if not wallet? Do you see that?
Yes.
Does that piece of code run several lines?
It does, yep.
Can you explain your understanding of what this piece of code does?
Broadly speaking, this initiates the transaction for withdrawal process, allocating a transaction ID, but within the context of a 90-second timeout.
Can you elaborate on what you mean by 90-second timeout?
Sure. It tries to run the transaction that would create a transaction ID. If the 90-second timeout is breached, it goes into an error pathway where you get the withdrawal status of failed, and this would notify the user that the withdrawal has not worked.
Okay. And just one final piece to look at. If you could turn to page FTX ELD Capital 113, please. Just the next page.
Yep.
You see the final paragraph on that page begins def process BTC.
Yes.
Can you explain your understanding of what this piece of code does?
This is related to the batching of Bitcoin withdrawals, and often Bitcoin is quite expensive to shift around, so batching it often makes sense, economic sense. What this piece of code does is silently remove any transaction or any withdrawal whose account jurisdiction isn't in the Bahamas.
What does that mean practically?
That means that if you're in the Bahamas, you can withdraw Bitcoin. If you're anywhere else than the Bahamas, you'll silently fail.
Considering all the pieces of code that we just reviewed, what is your understanding of whether ELD transactions after the Tron announcement could have processed?
My understanding of this code would indicate that there's no possibility that the withdrawal could ever occur, because the global financial health checks would all fail. The only way that it could ever go through is with a super admin override.
Mr. Cubitt, I have no further questions for you at this time. Thank you.
Thanks.
I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Cubitt.
Hi there.
My name is Brian Gluckstein with Sullivan & Cromwell, and I represent the FTX Recovery Trust. I'll be asking you a few questions this afternoon. Mr. Cubitt, you graduated from Essex University in England with a degree in computer science, correct?
Computer science with artificial intelligence, yes.
And after graduating university, you worked as a software engineer, correct?
Sure, many years.
And actually in 2005, you co-founded a company called Enstance, correct?
Sure.
And Enstance was started to produce in order to produce a mobile trading solution for proprietary and institutional traders, correct?
Correct.
And your work with Enstance ended in approximately 2009, correct?
Yep, shortly after the collapse of the global financial systems, the 2008 collapse.
And from 2009 until 2020, you worked at a company you founded called Algo Platform, correct?
Sure.
And you worked there as a quantitative trader, correct?
Yeah.
You eventually transitioned into cryptocurrency trading, correct?
Yes.
You formed ELD Capital on or about November 20th of 2020, correct?
Yes.
And initially, ELD Capital traded on the Binance exchange for some period of time, correct?
Correct.
And I think as you've testified today, you kept most of your assets on the exchange account at FTX.com that you subsequently opened, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you used your FTX.com account like a bank account, correct?
In many ways, that's true.
You did not have any significant money in a checking or other bank account in November of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And it was your decision to put your life savings, as you call it, into cryptocurrency in 2022, correct?
Yes.
And there's risks inherent in any currency trading, correct?
Correct.
And there are certainly risks associated with cryptocurrency trading, correct?
Correct.
And you assume those risks by putting your assets into the FTX exchange, correct?
Well, there's two different types of risks there. We were quite successful in investing in cryptocurrency.
But you assume the risk of your assets being deposited onto the FTX.com exchange, correct?
Correct.
And as the trader for ELD Capital, you monitored news about the cryptocurrency markets in 2022, correct?
Yes.
And you monitored news using Bloomberg and Reuters, correct?
Yeah, those two were my favorites.
You also, from time to time, reviewed social media with respect to cryptocurrency, correct?
To an extent, although not in a traditional way, and I tended to follow macroeconomic commentators.
Before FTX filed for bankruptcy in November of 2022, you knew there were substantial and well-publicized concerns about FTX's ability to operate as a going concern, correct?
Yes, I was aware that there was a liquidity crisis, exactly.
And in fact, you saw news articles in November of 2022 prior to purchasing any Tron tokens that FTX might file for bankruptcy, correct?
There were many articles speculating.
And you saw those articles in November of 2022 that FTX might file for bankruptcy, correct?
Presumably, yeah.
And you were aware at that time that FTX needed billions of dollars in funding to avoid bankruptcy, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you saw news articles that made clear that FTX needed approximately $8 billion in liquidity to continue operations, correct?
That's correct.
You were also aware that because of liquidity issues, that FTX.com had generally frozen withdrawals by November 8th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
And that withdrawal freeze was a problem for you because of your assets being tied up on the FTX.com exchange, correct?
Yes.
And you made several attempts to withdraw assets on November 8th and 9th of 2022, correct?
Yes.
On November 8th of 2022, you attempted to withdraw 200 Ethereum tokens from your account, correct?
Yes.
You, at the time, you wanted to move those assets to another exchange, correct?
Yes.
And as of November 8th, 2022, those 200 Ethereum represented approximately half of ELD's assets on the FTX.com exchange, correct?
Yes.
And you weren't able to actually withdraw the 200 ETH because of the withdrawal freeze, correct?
Yes.
And as you testified on direct, that same day, you bought a small amount of AVAX tokens on the FTX exchange, correct?
Correct.
And you bought those AVAX tokens to test whether you'd be able to withdraw them, correct?
Correct.
And you were not able to withdraw those AVAX tokens, correct?
That's right.
And it's your testimony that ELD Capital participated in the Tron credit facility because of FTX's announcement that you saw of that facility, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that announcement is reproduced in paragraph 11 of your declaration, correct?
Well, I don't have that exactly in front of me, but I'm sure you're correct.
Let's put it up. We can put it up on the screen, and if you have it with you, but it should be on your screen. It's FTX Exhibit 1. Put it up here. Are you able to see that, sir?
Yep, I can see that pretty clearly.
Okay, and if we look at paragraph 11 of your declaration here, which has been marked as FTX Exhibit 1, there's some testimony, and then there's a block quote following the word announcement. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And this is the announcement that you have testified that you saw in November of 2022 that caused you to try to participate in the Tron credit facility, correct?
Yes.
And you read this announcement regarding the Tron credit facility on the FTX website, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and on the fourth line of this announcement, as it's excerpted, as it's reproduced in your declaration, there's a sentence there that says the exact capacity of the Tron token facility will be determined weekly. Do you see that?
Can you tell me which line it was on?
It starts on the fourth line.
Yes, I
Exact
can see that.
capacity.
Yep, I can see that.
And you read that language at the time when you read the entirety of this announcement, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and about a little more than halfway down this reproduction of the announcement, there's a sentence that says, initially, $13 million of assets will be deployed to facilitate such swaps. Do you see that?
I do.
You understood at the time, based on reading this announcement, that only $13 million of assets would be available at the time that the Tron facility opened, correct?
What 13 million of Tron at market value is very different from 13 million of Tron FTX value.
This announcement says $13 million of assets will be deployed to facilitate such swaps. Do you see that, sir?
I do, yeah.
Did you have an understanding as to what that $13 million of assets was referring to at that time?
Yes.
I'm sorry, so the record is clear, sir, because you broke up. You answered the question yes?
I answered the question yes.
Thank you.
Do you want me to elaborate?
No, the $13 million of assets being deployed to facilitate such swaps referred to the commitment by Tron of Tron tokens, correct?
Yes.
You understood there was a chance that Tron token holders would not be able to immediately utilize the facility, correct?
I mean, it says weekly and feature injections, so yes.
When you first read this announcement, sir, you did not know how the swap transaction contemplated by this announcement was supposed to work, correct?
Not exactly, but as I said to you, we did understand that the process was the other side of the swap would be the Hubi exchange, and the process by which was to fill out the form, and once everything was established, that the swap would occur.
There's nothing in this announcement, sir, that describes how the swap was to occur, correct?
Correct.
And there's no other documents or information provided by FTX at the time that you reviewed that described how the swap transaction was to occur, correct?
Correct.
If you look down towards the bottom of this paragraph of the announcement, second to last sentence says, please ensure you understand the details of this arrangement and any associated risks before taking any actions. Do you see that?
I do.
And you read that language at the time you read the announcement in November of 2022, correct?
Yes.
You never reached out or contacted FTX support with respect to this announcement, correct?
FTX went dark.
You did not take any steps to reach out to FTX support after, as you describe it, the FTX website went dark, correct?
Exactly. There was nothing to get in touch with.
You didn't explore whether there were other means to get in touch with anybody at FTX, correct?
No, the MX records were deleted, and the A-name records had gone as well. So no email could get through, and the website didn't exist anymore.
The Tron facility, the announcement that we're looking at here in this paragraph, in the sentence immediately prior to the one we were just looking at, says, please note these markets, TRX, BTT, JST, SUN, and HT, may experience high levels of volatility. Do you see that?
I do.
And you read that warning at the time you read the announcement, November of 2022, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that after the announcement was made, the prices of Tron-sponsored tokens on the FTX exchange were higher than that of the same tokens on other exchanges, correct?
Yes.
I apologize. This is the court again. Your response was muffled. Was the answer yes?
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
And that meant that if you bought Tron-sponsored tokens on the FTX.com exchange in order to move them off the exchange, you knew you were suffering a loss in the overall account value, correct?
Exactly, yes. We paid a deep price for liquidity.
And in fact, I believe you testified on direct examination that you understood you were accepting approximately an 80% loss at the time, even if the swap transaction had been completed, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand the caveat.
If the swap transaction for Tron tokens had been completed, you would have lost approximately 80% of your account value, the $100,000 value of Tron tokens, as opposed to the $600,000 of Ethereum that you had previously, correct?
Yes, but we would have had the liquidity.
Correct, but that liquidity would have totaled approximately $100,000, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, sir, and as has been set out, and I believe as you testified to some extent on direct, on November 10th of 2022, you purchased 33,691 TRX tokens on the FTX exchange, correct?
Yes.
Those tokens were purchased on the exchange, not from FTX, correct?
Well, the only person selling them was FTX.
There's nothing in the announcement or otherwise to suggest that FTX itself was selling the tokens on the exchange, correct?
Well, Almeida was FTX's market maker, so in essence, it is only FTX. The fact of the matter was that nobody could deposit Tron tokens. FTX had a stranglehold on the market.
You're not suggesting that other users on the FTX exchange were unable to sell their Tron tokens at this time, are you?
No.
Okay, and you purchased that initial quantity of TRX tokens with cash you had in your FTX.com account, correct?
Correct.
And you then attempted to withdraw the TRX you had purchased shortly thereafter, correct?
Yes.
And you tried to withdraw it because you wanted to probe whether you could take the TRX off the exchange by withdrawing it, correct?
Yes.
And your withdrawal was not immediately processed, correct?
No, I left it for 12 hours.
Okay, and you suggested on your direct examination that, quote, nothing happened, end quote, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but in fact, you received an email from FTX support with respect to the requested withdrawal, correct?
That's true.
All right, can we look at that? We look at FTX Exhibit 8. Okay, and so, can you see this in front of you, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay, and so this email is dated November 10th, 2022 at 1:45 p.m. UTC. Do you see that?
Yeah.
And in the to line, there's an email address, eld.capital@protonmail.ch. Do you see that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm looking at the email address that's in the to line that starts
ELD
eld.capital.
Capital? Yes.
And that's the email address that ELD Capital utilized on the FTX.com exchange, correct?
Yes.
And this email acknowledges that FTX had received a request to withdraw 33,691 TRX, correct?
He broke up a bit, but I get the sense that the answer is yes.
And
No, I'm sorry.
let me repeat the question
need
to
to
make
repeat
sure
the
that you
question.
understood my question, sir.
Okay.
My question was that the first line of the email states from FTX.com that we have received a request to withdraw 33,691 TRX from your FTX account. to a different wallet. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And then below that, there's a sentence that says withdrawals are processed within a few hours. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. And then, as you testified earlier, you chose to cancel this withdrawal request, correct?
After over 12 hours, yes.
Okay. And you decided to cancel it despite receiving the email confirmation that the withdrawal transaction had been received, correct?
Exactly. There was just nothing going on the UI that you would expect to see.
Can you clarify what you mean by UI?
The user interface of FTX, when you place a withdrawal, gives you visual feedback and a withdrawal ID. It tells you the status. It's being processed. It gives you a link to a transaction on a blockchain. None of those things occurred. Sometimes it can take quite a while, but you do get indication from the UI that something is happening. In all of that 12 hours, there was no indication that anything was happening, and as I now know, nothing was happening. It had silently failed, like every single other one of my withdrawal attempts.
Okay, sir, after you canceled that first TRX withdrawal transaction, you then voluntarily began converting the remainder of ELD Capital's assets into Tron tokens on November 11th, 2022, correct?
Exactly, yeah. I liquidated any other asset type and put everything into TRX.
Okay, and you did that after the prior withdrawals that were not completed that we've been discussing, correct?
Exactly. For me, it was a confirmation that withdrawal was not the path and that it was a swap. That's what I thought at the time.
Okay, but nonetheless, you did try to withdraw all of the ELD Capital Tron tokens after that larger purchase, correct?
Sure, it would have been daft to have not at least tried.
Okay.
If it was just a simple withdrawal and it would have worked, we would have been happy.
And when you made that second larger withdrawal, you again received an email from FTX confirming that you had initiated the withdrawal transaction, correct?
Yes, of course.
All right, well, let's look at that. And that's FTX Exhibit 11. And again, sir, this is an email that ELD Capital received from FTX on November 11th. You recognize this email, sir?
Yeah, it's more or less identical to the previous one, except the amount is different.
The amount is different and reflects your request to withdraw the much larger quantity of TRX tokens, correct?
Yep.
And the email again says, as we saw in the earlier one, withdrawals are processed within a few hours. Do you see that?
Yep.
But again, you decided to cancel this withdrawal attempt, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, you did so after only 5 minutes after making the withdrawal request, correct?
Exactly. Once again, nothing that would normally happen on the UI happened at all. It just literally nothing happened. And as we now know, it had silently failed.
Sir, you do not know whether the withdrawal attempt would have ever been completed because you canceled it, correct?
It could never have gone through. We've reviewed the code.
We'll come to that. But you do not know, having canceled the withdrawal attempt at that time, whether the withdrawal request would have been completed, correct?
At the time, I didn't believe anything was happening, as there was no feedback from the UI. It wasn't in a processing state. Nothing was happening. So, for me, it was just make sure that it isn't a simple withdrawal. It's indication that there's a swap facility. At the time, that was my thought.
And you did not know at the time in November of 2022, whether any other customers were able to use the Tron credit facility successfully while it was open, correct?
I'm not aware of any.
And do you now know that other customers did, in fact, use the Tron credit facility successfully during this time in November of 2022?
I mean, it's been reported that certain insiders were able to get their money out if they had access to administrators that would give them the super admin override.
Sir, have you reviewed Mr. Ramanathan's declarations that is evidence in this case before this court in connection with your testimony today?
To an extent, I mean, one of the documents was about 193 pages, largely of snippets from the internet.
Can we look at FTX Exhibit 5? So, Cubit, what you see on the screen here, FTX Exhibit 5, is entitled the Supplemental Declaration of Kumanan Ramanathan in support of the FTX Recovery Trust objection to the proofs of claim filed by ELD Capital. Have you ever reviewed this document, sir?
Yes.
Okay. If we look at paragraph 7 of this document, Mr. Ramanathan states in paragraph 7 in testimony that is now in evidence before this court that in the second sentence, unless canceled by the customer, these withdrawal orders were successfully processed until the relevant supply of Tron tokens in the Tron wallet was effectively depleted. During this time, some customer withdrawals of Tron tokens experienced processing delays lasting several hours. Do you see that?
I do see it.
Okay, and so you are now aware that other users were able to successfully use the Tron credit facility during this time, correct?
I disagree with the mechanism of action.
Can you elaborate what you mean by the mechanism of action?
Implied with this is that there was no additional help from an administrator in FTX to force the super admin override. I do not believe that without that anything could have occurred, because the global health check for the exchange would have failed on November 10th. As you said, there was a hole of $8 billion. And it's widely reported that it was only insiders that could get their money out. So when I say I disagree with the mechanism of action, implied within this statement is that it was accessible to all users. I don't think that's the case.
Okay, and sir, you've testified a lot now about your reading of the excerpt of Python code that was produced by the FTX Recovery Trust, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you have access only to that excerpt and not to the remainder of the FTX.com exchange Python code, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you've talked about your interpretation of needing a super admin override for these transactions, correct?
Yes, it's consistent with what is later reported in the press.
Yeah, but you do not know whether any sort of override was in fact implemented to allow transactions to be processed under the Tron facility, correct?
I see no other way that the transaction could have occurred because of the global health check for the exchange. As you said, $8 billion in the hole.
But given the announcement of the Tron facility, you do not know whether FTX in fact did override as necessary to allow those transactions to be completed, correct?
No, I'm sorry, I just disagree. There's no pathway for the Tron 2 hot wallet to jump that global health check.
It is your testimony that notwithstanding the fact that these transactions did in fact occur, as we now see from Mr. Ramanathan, that it was impossible for these transactions to occur. That's your testimony, sir?
Without the aid of an insider to give it the super admin override, and again, as it says there, ordinarily it wouldn't take several hours. The reason it did take several hours is that somebody had to manually go in and do the super admin override. That's my understanding.
And you have no idea one way or the other whether any necessary actions that needed to be taken by FTX would have been taken with respect to your withdrawal request had you not canceled it, correct?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
You do not know, sir, one way or the other, whether any necessary actions by FTX would have been taken to complete your withdrawal request if you had not canceled it, correct?
Well, the global health check, there was no way of skipping that.
Sir,
Unless you're suggesting that somebody would have...
Sorry, go ahead.
Are you suggesting that somebody from FTX would have located my transaction and given it the super admin override?
What I'm suggesting is you do not know whether that or some other action by FTX would have been taken to facilitate the usage of the Tron credit facility as suggested it would be done, correct?
You're right. I can't know that somebody within, had I have left it, somebody would give it the insider's treatment or the VIP treatment as it's referred.
I'm sorry. I need you to repeat your testimony because it was garbled by the internet. And also, can we take down the screen sharing so I can see the witness?
Yes, sir. Yes, we can do that. Thank you.
All right. I'm sorry, Mr. Cubic. Can you repeat that answer? I caught some of it, but not all of it.
I'm terribly sorry, Your Honor. Could the question be repeated?
To the extent, Mr. Gluckstein, you're able to repeat your question. I think the question was that you don't know whether your request would have been processed as necessary.
I mean, I can only speculate about that because it's possible for somebody within FTX to have found it and decided to give it the super admin override, or otherwise known as we now know as the VIP treatment.
Sir, you also testified that I believe that you testified that you reviewed some sort of instructions that led you to believe you needed to open an account on the Huobi exchange, correct?
Yes.
No such instructions were provided by anybody at FTX to you, correct?
I don't think I made that claim.
And in fact, in the announcement that we were just looking at that's reproduced in your declaration, there is no mention at all to the Huobi exchange, correct?
That's true, but there is mention of Tron, and Justin's son was Tron, and he was also connected with the Huobi exchange, so it was kind of a natural connection.
The Huobi exchange existed and still exists independently of FTX, correct?
Yeah, it's now called HTX. There's been a horrendous rebranding, but yeah.
nobody at FTX, through that announcement that we reviewed or otherwise, suggested that you set up an account at Huobi on November 11th of 2022, correct?
No, I never asserted that.
Nothing in the Tron announcement that we reviewed says anything about a Huobi account being the way to swap Tron tokens off of FTX.com, correct?
That's true.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you very much. Would we like redirect?
No, Your Honor. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I think the witness can be excused.
All right, thank you. Mr. Cubitt, thank you very much for your time and attention to testifying today. You are released from our virtual witness box. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
If you wish, you can take your audio down and just watch as you prefer. Otherwise, feel free to stay on the screen. Would we like to take a break before we go into our? Well, let me ask you: are you finished with your testimony, your testimony today?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Is there any other evidence that I need to take into the record?
Not on behalf of the trust, Your Honor.
Okay.
Not on behalf of the LD.
Okay, we'll close the evidentiary portion of today's hearing. Why don't we take a short break, 10 minutes, and I'll come back on at 1:15, and we'll proceed to closings.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. be seated. Thank you for the short break. Mr. Gluckstein?
Good afternoon again, Your Honor. Brian Gluckstein for the trust. I think we are ready to proceed to closings if Your Honor is ready.
I am here.
Thank you. Your Honor, ELD Capital has a customer claim in this case of $98,960.39. We are very sympathetic to the circumstances that Mr. Cubitt and ELD was facing in November of 2022. There were thousands upon thousands of people who were harmed by FTX's collapse in very serious ways. But what ELD is doing today is seeking 6 times its customer claim amount in an effort to have the FTX Recovery Trust's other creditors pay for its increasingly reckless attempts to create liquidity at a time when the FTX.com exchange was collapsing. ELD Capital's efforts in November 2022 to withdraw its assets were part of the run on the bank that caused FTX's collapse following the revelation of a massive $8 billion hole in FTX Trading's balance sheet due to the actions of Sam Bankman-Fried and his co-conspirators. As that run on the bank unfolded over the first 10 days of November 2022, FTX generally stopped withdrawals from the FTX.com exchange while seeking injections of capital from other sources. It was widely reported at the time, especially following reports of the failed bailout attempt from Binance on November 9th, that FTX was on the brink of bankruptcy. While this was unfolding, FTX announced via Twitter and its website that it had received a small $13 million facility from Tron that would be offered by Tron to allow FTX.com exchange customers to withdraw tokens native to the Tron blockchain. That announcement on November 10th, in part, made clear that only $13 million of liquidity was committed by Tron to support the facility, and that as a result, Tron tokens, quote, may experience high levels of volatility, end quote, and urged FTX customers to, quote, please ensure you understand the details of this arrangement and any associated risk before taking any actions, end quote. The $13 million was a drop in the bucket as compared to the $8 billion liquidity hole facing the FTX.com exchange. As a result, as reflected in the public reports about this announcement that were referred to in Mr. Ramanathan's declaration, there were no guarantees that users would be able to withdraw their funds even if they bought Tron tokens at the inflated prices on which they were trading. Mr. Cubitt, after purchasing Tron tokens and unsuccessfully trying to withdraw them from the exchange, chose to double down and sell all of his remaining customer account assets and use the proceeds to purchase Tron tokens that constitute his existing customer account entitlement. Nonetheless, on the basis of the FTX announcement, and this announcement alone, ELD Capital has asserted a fraud claim. This claim, which would otherwise be released through the planned global settlement agreement, was expressly preserved for resolution by the court. ELD Capital has now had every opportunity to take discovery, present evidence of fraud to this court. It offers none. In relying solely on the testimony of Mr. Cubitt of ELD Capital, much of which is speculation, refuted by the unrebutted evidence presented by Mr. Ramanathan, it does not come close to proving the necessary elements of fraud with admissible evidence. Certainly, the fact that Mr. Cubitt, with knowledge of having been unable to withdraw Tron tokens, decided to plow all of ELD's remaining account value into Tron tokens does not constitute a fraud claim without much, much more. Your Honor, under Delaware law, to prevail on a fraud claim, ELD Capital has the burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence, each of 5 elements. 1, that the FTX made a false representation. 2, that FTX had knowledge it was false. 3, that it acted with scienter in intending to induce ELD to act. 4, that ELD justifiably relied upon that representation. And 5, that ELD Capital suffered damages. Fraud in Delaware, as Your Honor knows, is a very high bar. And ELD Capital has satisfied none of these elements, let alone all of them, as would be required. Rather, what the evidentiary record now establishes includes that, 1, there was no false representation. The forward-looking statements in the Tron announcement are not actionable. There was no guarantee that the Tron facility would be available to ELD Capital on demand, especially given the clear disclosure that there was only a $13 million commitment from Tron at the time the facility was to be made available. Possibly recognizing that its claim fails out of the gate, ELD Capital resorts to a fraud by hindsight theory, arguing that it couldn't use the facility, thus it must be fraudulent. But such a theory is an impermissible way to prove fraud under Delaware law, and we cite cases to that effect in our papers. Of course, the undisputed record now is clear that whether ELD could ultimately have used the Tron facility is unknowable because Mr. Cubitt canceled the withdrawal orders when not immediately fulfilled. The second one, representing the significant portion of his account value, was voluntarily canceled after only 5 minutes. ELD separately argues in its papers an additional omission theory of fraud based on the unsubstantiated allegations that either FTX had already determined to file bankruptcy when the Tron facility was announced, or B, that regulatory action had already occurred and was not disclosed. Neither of those alone would be actionable, but the unrefuted record now before the court, as buttressed by Mr. Cubitt's own testimony today, is both that the Omnibus Authority transferring control of the FTX group to John Ray, who is the person who authorized the bankruptcy filing, and actions by the Bahamas Securities Commission both occurred after the Tron announcement. We also know, as Mr. Cubitt testified today, that he understood the wide reporting that was going on that FTX might need to file for bankruptcy given its $8 billion liquidity shortfall. To Your Honor, there was no knowledge that any statement was false, nor was there any evidence in the record of scienter at the time of the statement. ELD Capital offers nothing that FTX knew its Tron announcement was false or that it made the announcement intending to commit fraud. The heart of ELD's argument is that the Tron facility was fraudulent from inception. Mr. Cubitt testified that he concluded it didn't work when his withdrawal request didn't immediately clear and then voluntarily canceled those requests. Mr. Ramanathan, in paragraphs 6 and 7 of his supplemental declaration, provides unrefuted testimony based on FTX.com exchange data that the Tron facility was in fact opened and operated as announced, and that customer withdrawal orders were in fact successfully processed until the relevant supply of Tron tokens, the $13 million worth that were placed into the Tron wallet, were depleted. We submit that that conclusively defeats ELD's knowledge and intent theories. But in addition, ELD posits, again with no evidentiary support, that FTX was somehow incentivized by the trading fees or the increased price of the Tron tokens on the exchange at the time. The entire $13 million offering was a relatively de minimis amount of liquidity compared to the $8 billion hole that FTX was facing, and certainly any fees, a tiny fraction of that. But Mr. Ramanathan again offers evidence, not speculation, but evidence from FTX's exchange records that is unrefuted. That evidence is that FTX made approximately $90,000 in fees from trades involving Tron tokens during the entire month of November, and another $95,000. That's it, not the $100 million that's suggested in Mr. Cubitt's declaration that he speculates about. $95,000 from sales of the Alameda-held tokens at increased prices. Of course, FTX was operating an exchange. It was not selling the tokens to Mr. Cubitt or any other user in most instances. That hardly provides any evidence of intent to offer the Tron facility for the purpose of making money. Fourth, Your Honor, there is unquestionably no reasonable reliance by Mr. Cubitt and ELD Capital on the announcement, even if any of these other elements had been satisfied. ELD Capital needs to prove that it justifiably relied on the Tron announcement, and it clearly has not done so. In fact, the record is starkly opposite. First, the Tron announcement presented obvious risk that the facility might be unavailable due to its limited initial capacity of $13 million. ELD cannot simply point to the fact that FTX made a statement and that it appeared on its website to support reliance. Case law in Delaware is clear that more is required. In addition, while the warning signs would preclude a claim by any small retail investor, Mr. Cubitt held himself out to be sophisticated and an experienced investor who has spent years as a self-employed builder of trading systems and trading in cryptocurrencies. Second, ELD Capital had knowledge of the well-publicized concerns about the FTX Group's ability to continue operating without billions and billions of dollars in new capital. Third, ELD knew of its own unsuccessful attempts to withdraw other assets prior to selling its cryptocurrency entitlements in favor of Tron tokens. Despite purchasing and unsuccessfully withdrawing a relatively small amount of Tron tokens on November 10th, Mr. Cubitt inexplicably made the conscious decision to double down and liquidate the entire remainder of the ELD Capital account assets to purchase Tron tokens on November 11th. Once he was unsuccessful in utilizing the Tron facility the first time, it was certainly unjustifiable to choose to try again with a substantially larger amount of money, and then immediately cancel that withdrawal attempt. Nor did ELD Capital do anything to get a better understanding or seek help from FTX. We saw that he received emails from FTX support confirming the withdrawal requests. He did not contact via email or any other means FTX support to discuss this facility or ask any questions about how the swap transaction that was reflected in the announcement was to proceed. Instead, without any understanding of how the swap of tokens worked, Mr. Cubitt on his own attempted to engage with the third-party Huobi exchange that is not controlled by or connected to the FTX group. Nowhere in the Tron announcement or anywhere else did FTX advise Mr. Cubitt to deal with Huobi, and he acknowledged as much on the stand today. Last, ELD has no answer whatsoever to the express non-reliance clause that exists in the .com terms of service that govern ELD's customer account. We discussed that in our papers. Section 2.11 of the .com terms of service is clear that customers cannot rely upon statements by FTX as investment advice or as a recommendation to transact. Despite a half-hearted attempt to argue in his papers that the Tron announcement was not investment advice, to the extent that ELD was relying on it in the manner that ELD claims it was, that is what caused it to take the series of steps we've been discussing today, it could only be interpreted as such advice in that context. And finally, Your Honor, ELD Capital has provided no evidence that it suffered any damages whatsoever. Even if the withdrawal of the Tron to the external Tron wallet had been successful, ELD Capital, by its own admission, would have suffered an enormous loss of approximately 80% of the value of those tokens from what it had prior to the sale of its Ethereum and purchase of Tron, and would have realized virtually the precise amount of its petition date customer claim that it holds today. There is simply no causation attributive to FTX. Once this litigation is resolved, if the objection is sustained, ELD Capital will still get the benefit of those holdings plus interest under the terms of the confirmed Chapter 11 plan. That interest being provided to all creditors due to the passage of time and the inability to access that liquidity. Your Honor, ELD Capital made the decision to purchase Tron tokens from third parties and hold them. It did not attempt to sell them to other third parties on the exchange in the days of the collapse. At the end of the day, ELD Capital made a series of what turned out to be imprudent, speculative decisions that did not succeed. While that is undoubtedly regrettable, its efforts to pass their costs on to the trust's other creditors must be, we submit, rejected. ELD Capital has not provided, with admissible evidence, anything to prove each and every element of fraud. And again, Your Honor, it's fraud that's being asserted here as the claim. And its claim, we submit, must be reduced to the petition date value of its account holdings. I'm happy to answer any questions the court has. Otherwise, that concludes my remarks.
All right, nothing further at this time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, may it please the court once again, Alec Barron on behalf of ELD Capital, LLC. And I think it's helpful just to reorient ourselves in the actual language of the announcement here. That was to create a, quote, special facility to enable customers holding Tron tokens to transfer their tokens on a one-to-one basis off the FTX platform. The announcement trumpeted that this special facility would, quote, allow holders of the 5 Tron-sponsored tokens to swap assets from FTX one-to-one to external wallets. Moreover, the announcement stated that its exact capacity would be determined weekly, and the announcement referenced future injections. To be sure, there was a generic reference to risk, but this announcement was unmistakably designed to induce customers to purchase Tron tokens. I think it's also relevant to remember that the announcement was made the day before the petition was filed. Shortly after the announcement was made, Mr. Cubitt and Ms. Salmon logged on to FTX.com and saw a banner displayed prominently at the top of the homepage, advertising the announcement. They followed the link in that banner to the full announcement. After reviewing the details of the announcement, which were amplified by popular and financial news sources, and researching the mechanics of Tron tokens, they made an admittedly difficult decision to purchase Tron tokens using the assets in their FTX account. The decision was not difficult because Mr. Cubitt and Ms. Salmon were fully apprised of the risks, and as the evidence shows, certainty that they would not be able to realize the value of the liquidity they were purchasing, along with the Tron tokens. The decision was difficult because it involved trading their life savings of nearly $570,000, or its equivalent, held in assets on the FTX platform for Tron tokens with the then market value of approximately $98,000, plus the ability to use the special facility to access their savings. That bargain involved obtaining liquidity. That was an essential element of the deal they struck. ELD did exactly what FTX sought when the announcement was made. Its actions were not heedless, they were not reckless, as the trust accuses. No, Mr. Cubitt's testimony more than demonstrates that. They reviewed the Tron white paper to make sure they understood the mechanics of the tokens. They checked the prices of the various tokens and made a determination of which would be suitable for purposes of using the facility. They left a withdrawal attempt open for 12 hours, not the 5 minutes that we keep hearing about. Sure, they made another attempt that they left open for a shorter period of time, as with their other attempts, but they attempted to use the facility and kept that open for 12 hours, and there's still no explanation other than Mr. Cubitt's understanding of the code that you heard from him today for the reasons that that didn't process. ELD's amended proof of claim does plead a fraud claim against FTX, and the evidence proves that claim. We agree with the trust largely on the elements of a fraud claim. I think with the caveat we point out in our papers that there is an equitable fraud claim in Delaware that has a different scienter requirement. We submit that the elements of both claims are met. But the evidence shows that FTX made the announcement at a time it knew or should have known that it would be unable to fulfill ELD's attempts to use the special facility. Indeed, the Omnibus Corporate Authority, although signed in the very early hours of November 11th, 2022, was dated on November 10th, 2022, the day of the announcement. That's in the record at ELD 9, I think among other places. Moreover, the code produced by the trust shows that it would not have been possible for ELD and similarly situated customers to utilize that special facility. We would submit that Mr. Ramanthan's declaration does not prove otherwise. It identifies no customers that were able to use the facility. It doesn't attempt to explain why the 12-hour attempt to withdraw failed. We submit that ELD's reliance on the announcement was reasonable. The trust represented in its discovery responses that 8,541 unique user accounts on the FTX.com exchange purchased Tron tokens between the time the announcement was made and the time the debtors filed for bankruptcy. That's ELD 7 at page 10. The fact that 8,541 other users purchased Tron tokens in the roughly 1 day following the announcement confirms that ELD's reliance was reasonable. Moreover, although FTX was experiencing a liquidity crisis at the time of the announcement, none of the public reporting indicates nearly a certainty that FTX would go bankrupt or the time frame when it might. Delaware law establishes that reasonable reliance is a context-specific judgment. Despite the trust's attempts to paint ELD as an institution, the testimony today demonstrates otherwise. There were no special trading methods, special research methods, high-frequency trading, arbitrage, swing trading, any of the other characteristics that an institution might use to trade on FTX's platform. In fact, ELD Capital never plugged into the API that would have given it an ability to do so on the FTX platform. In terms of the debtor's scienter, the Omnibus Corporate Authority, again, although signed on November 11th, was dated November 10th. The letter of intent between Tron and FTX, dated on November 10th, 2022, indicated that Tron shall, quote, structure and fund a withdrawal facility to support all Tron-related tokens existing on the FTX platform. That's ELD 8 at Article 2, Section Romanet 2. That's what Tron understood about the offer. FTX had a different understanding at the time that it made the announcement. We submit the Omnibus Corporate Authority as evidence of when bankruptcy was being contemplated and, in fact, being carried out. I want to address the .com terms of service argument we heard from our friends. The .com terms of service at Article 30.1.2 indicates, quote, nothing in the terms shall limit or exclude a party's liability for fraud or fraudulent misrepresentation. I apologize if that wasn't clear in our objection papers, but we submit that the .com terms of service do not extinguish this claim. And of course, the confirmation of the plan doesn't extinguish the claim because we negotiated a carve-out from the release. The trust acknowledges in its papers that ELD accepted a liquidity discount. ELD never received the liquidity for which it paid a premium. In terms of the losses of ELD, I do want to address that rescission is a remedy for fraud under Delaware law. That is something we raised in our objection. That was not addressed at all in the trust's reply. We raised points in authority explaining that rescission is available, so there's no mystery as to what remedy ELD might be entitled to should the court find FTX and the trust liable for fraud. Simply put, the court has authority to order rescission here, which would place ELD in the position it was before it made these transactions the day before the petition was filed. At bottom, the trust is really saying that it was unreasonable for ELD to rely on an offer that FTX itself made. We submit that the evidence establishes that ELD's reliance is reasonable, and the answer can't simply be that the trust can make an offer, the former debtors can make an offer, not hold up its end of a bargain, and simply be exculpated by hindsight. I think there are a number of false equivalencies that have been raised, including ELD's purported expertise as an institution or Mr. Cubitt's expertise in computer sciences and finance. That does not equate, bless you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
That does not equate with knowledge sufficient to detect fraud. You know, as you heard, Mr. Cubitt certainly has a long history and professional experience in this area, but he didn't have access to the facts sufficient to know the fraud. The idea that Mr. Cubitt and ELD assumed the risk of putting assets on the FTX exchange likewise is not equal to an assumption of risk for fraud, and we don't think that's a defense that applies in any event. The announcement that we read has a risk disclosure noting that Tron tokens were likely to experience volatility. Mr. Cubitt was aware of that. He accepted the liquidity discount in exchange for the tokens and what he believed to be the liquidity he would obtain. And so the notion that there's a disclosure of potential volatility and that's a full disclosure that customers like ELD wouldn't be able to use the facility, we think just doesn't answer the call. The emails that we reviewed that Mr. Gluckstein asked Mr. Cubitt about in terms of what he saw when he placed these withdrawal attempts are not a complete picture. As we also heard from Mr. Cubitt's testimony, there was no transaction ID assigned. There was no notation that there was a transaction pending. None of the normal indicators on the user interface of FTX.com that ordinarily would have pertained to a transaction were present. Again, that supports the reasonableness of ELD's actions and not reckless, heedless activity. I also think, as you heard today, Mr. Cubitt and Ms. Salmon are not seeking to have other creditors bear the cost of their own reckless decisions, as the trust puts it. They're simply asking to be restored to the position that they would have been in had they not been exposed to an offer that could never have been delivered. We think all the elements of fraud are established for the reasons discussed in our papers and further outlined today. We would rest on our presentation thus far unless the court has any other questions.
I do not. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just briefly, Brian Gluckstein for the trust. Counsel represents that the announcement that we've been talking about today was designed to induce the purchase of Tron tokens. There's nothing in this announcement we would submit that suggests that at all. In fact, we continue to seemingly being talking past each other. Mr. Cubitt alluded to it earlier with his suggestion, his declaration, $100 million or something of profit that could have been made by FTX. Other than with respect to Alameda, who had an account on FTX and traded as any other customer did, and that's the source of the $95,000 that Mr. Ramanan talks about in his declaration. The purchases of these tokens at whatever heightened price the market drove them up to on the FTX exchange was between ELD Capital and the seller of that token. That's no different than any other transaction on the exchange. And so the suggestion that this was designed to purchase tokens, we submit, is completely opposite of what's happening here. What is obvious from the record is that as ELD Capital was suffering from, customers had withdrawals generally frozen during this time due to the run on the bank and the $8 billion hold that was disclosed or became public. And FTX, through this and other means, was attempting to work with third parties to help customers in a time of need. This facility, the $13 million, was being funded by Tron, not FTX. the $13 million in tokens was put in what was discussed in the papers as the Tron wallet, which was outside of the FTX exchange environment, and was going to be made available to allow customers to utilize it. And what we have in the record is testimony from FTX saying that based on the exchange data, that those withdrawal offers were in fact successfully processed until the entire relevant supply of tokens was depleted. That $13 million was used. Yes, we did identify 8,154 users who purchased tokens during the relevant period. ELD is the only one here asserting fraud. This facility operated. The suggestion by Mr. Cubitt's piecemeal and partial review of code is an incomplete and incorrect picture. Certainly incomplete, as he acknowledged on cross-examination. He does not have access to the entirety of the FTX code base. A snippet of code was produced in response to a particular discovery request, and Mr. Cubitt shows up today for the first time trying to interpret it. That is not dispositive of anything. The evidence that's before the court that is dispositive is that withdrawal orders were successfully processed during this period of time. And we do not know, despite Mr. Cubitt saying that he did not see signs that he had seen in the past of trades being processed. That is not evidence of anything. We don't have any testimony from FTX. It was not developed by ELD as to what normal, quote, normal indicators are. What we know is that withdrawal orders were in fact successfully processed. The entire premise of this fraud claim is that ELD could not have used this facility because the trades did not clear in their usual almost immediate period of time, despite the disclaimer saying that there could be delays. We do not know whether ELD's trades would have in fact closed or not. Would they have gotten into the $13 million? Maybe they would have, maybe they would not have. We do not know because those trades were canceled. The question around sophistication, Your Honor, is not a question. We are not suggesting that ELD Capital is an institutional trader in the sense of large-scale institutional traders. It is important, Your Honor, though, when we talk about sophistication and knowledge. Mr. Cubitt's here today purporting to offer testimony about Python code. Right? He testified about his experience in trading in cryptocurrencies. This is a full-time job for him. He's not working outside of this endeavor at ELD Capital. It goes to the element of fraud that needs to be established of justifiable reliance. And we submit, Your Honor, that given the record that's before the court, we can agree to disagree about the initial steps that were taken by ELD Capital and Mr. Cubitt and their justifiable reliance of the initial purchase of Tron tokens. But we submit that once that trade did not clear and Mr. Cubitt voluntarily canceled that withdrawal request, it is absolutely not justifiable that he doubled down and took a much larger amount of money based on that same announcement and did the exact same thing. If he believed it was not going to work, it makes no sense that he did it again. We certainly understand, Your Honor, that rescission could be a remedy here. That's not the argument that we're making. The question is there a fraud claim in the first place? And to establish a fraud claim, the claimant needs to establish as an element of that fraud claim damages. So it's not a question about what remedy could the court impose if a fraud claim is found to exist. The question is what damages, if any, did ELD Capital suffer? And we submit that they suffered no damages because they understood at the time that the totality of the liquidity that they would have gotten was going to be reduced, their claim amount by about 80%. We heard that today from Mr. Cubitt. That is the $98,000 or so that existed on the petition date. Of course, claims are being valued in this case as of the petition date is virtually an identical amount of money if he had taken it off and that transaction had closed on November 11th. We, of course, the plan in this case provides for interest for the recognition that that liquidity has been tied up since the petition date.
So we submit, Your Honor, that there's no evidence in the record whatsoever of damages amongst all the other infirmities that we've been discussing. Just one quick and final word, Your Honor, since it was raised in the remarks with respect to the omnibus authority, because we otherwise didn't discuss that today. The omnibus authority that's at issue does not provide for the filing of bankruptcy. What that document does is it transfers control of the FTX group from Mr. Bankman-Fried to Mr. John Ray. Right? And what we now know, despite the speculation that existed in the claimant's papers, that despite that document being dated the 10th of November, we produced the information that shows precisely when that document was signed. And it was in the early morning hours of November 11th, a number of hours after the Tron facility announcement that Mr. Cubitt reviewed was made public. This is actually an easier situation than certain situations where it isn't entirely clear when a company made a decision to file for bankruptcy. Here we know no decision could have been made to file for bankruptcy prior to Mr. Ray being hired and installed at FTX, which we know did not happen until after the Tron facility had been opened and was being utilized by customers. So it is 100% certainty that any decision, when the decision was made to file for bankruptcy, happened after the execution of the omnibus corporate authority, which we know itself was not signed by Mr. Bankman-Fried until after the facility was opened. So the sequencing and the theories that are posited in the papers of the claimant are not borne out by the evidence that's now before the court. So we would submit, Your Honor, in sum, for all the reasons that we've been discussing today and in our papers, ELD Capital does not come close to satisfying each and every element of fraud as required to have such a claim here in Delaware. We again request that that portion of their claim be denied and that ELD Capital's customer claim be reduced to its petition date balance as set forth in our papers. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all very much. I have no further questions. I will take this matter on advisement and roll promptly. Thank you all very much. We'll stand adjourned unless there's something else we need to discuss today. It's Gary. No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.